All right. Think I'll do. I like that so much. I think I'll do one more little musical interlude here, and where we got that? This one. Sorry about the delay. Had to warm the coffee up. Had to warm the coffee up here. Now, Americans have not only been committed by our corrupt political class to never question Israel's right to kill anyone as long as they utter the words in self-defense. We even have to pay for their ammunition. Our U.S. Senate debased itself with the usual groveling resolution to offer a blank check to pay for all the Zionist crimes against humanity in Gaza. Veterans Today has recently published that the U.S. gave 350 of its mothballed Davy Crockett tactical nukes to Israel for their potential use against large armor formations of Syria at the time. Our weapons expert and designer have discovered that the nuclear fingerprint of the uranium used in those weapons has turned up in many terrorist bombings over the years. This would have required high-tech refurbishing of the original nuclear components, which themselves were a gross violation of the non-proliferation laws the U.S. made a mockery of in Israel's case and fools of the American people in progress. I mentioned this today for the blackmail position that put Israel in over us, a really stupid move and one for which the score needs to be settled. Another one that needs to be addressed is the confirmation we have that the many nukes were used in the 9/11 attack as trace element clues were a slam dunk by the Sandia Lab report. Despite running several stories on this, Veterans Today says, we have had not one mass media inquiry wanting to learn more. Imagine that. One might get curious that one of the reasons America is neutered in dealing effectively with the Middle East situation is that we gave nuclear weapons to the main terrorist nation there, and that nation, folks, is Israel. Americans, like the Gazans, have been left defenseless from the national security threat that we face from the Zionist regime abroad and here at home through their extensive political subversion of our democracy. We are at a point now where they just give the nukes to Congress and they place and set them off where instructed, be they blank check resolutions supporting Israel of war crimes or covering up a rigged 9/11 investigation. This is how deep it goes, folks. Now, what's happening in Israel right now? 72-hour ceasefire was supposed to get underway on August 1st, starting at 8 a.m. local time, but no sooner had it begun than it appeared to collapse. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, more than 30 Palestinians were killed, dozens more injured in an Israeli attack near the southern town of Rafah. If, against all odds, a genuine ceasefire were to actually take place, the pause would allow time for both sides fighters to regroup and rearm, but one of the civilian population of a now substantially destroyed Gaza. Presumably, many will try to visit their bombed homes to retrieve some belongings, as we've seen in Syria and Iraq. Many may try finding a place to hide, say perhaps a UN school. Oh, well, maybe that's a bad choice. Others may simply stay in their homes and wait to die. Now, folks, Connolly didn't want to talk about it, and I can understand that. Because it's a sure way to get all of your support. Watch it evaporate. Watch it just evaporate. Well, if a Jew calls you with the ADL or Southern Poverty Law or AIPAC, if they call you anti-Semitic, it's like a death sentence for you. This is what has happened to me, folks. Now, I'm back in Texas, and I'm trying to rebuild. I need your help to do that. I need some donations. Just so I got the gas to get there, I need donations sent to, all you got to do is go to freeamerican.com and click on any of the donate buttons there. And you'll be able to chip in and help somebody that's trying to get the truth out to the American people. The reason talking about Israel is so important is because they have the same thing planned for you. Americans are the next Palestinians. They've brought the illegals up here. They've got the gang warfare here. Call them Al-CIA, call them Al-Qaeda, call them ISIS, call them whatever you want. They pick their names. They're trained by the Mossad. They're trained by the CIA. And then they will be pitted against you. The illegals in this country have already murdered more people than were killed at 9/11. And not that many people were killed in 9/11 because the Israelis warned their people beforehand, so they didn't show up for work that day. Larry Silverstein didn't show up for breakfast at the Top of the World restaurant at the top of and neither did his daughter. Come on, where do we go here? What happened? I lost it here. There it is. The Israelis will be able to resupply themselves with 40 millimeter grenades, 120 millimeter mortar rounds. Stocks of the Pentagon claims need to be refreshed. This according to Rear Admiral John Kirby, the Pentagon's press secretary, who rejected out of hand this week's Amnesty International demand that the U.S. government immediately end its ongoing arms deliveries to Israel, which are providing the tools to commit further serious violations of international law in Gaza. Not only that, earlier the U.S. Senate, by a vote of 100-0, passed a resolution drafted by AIPAC expressing support for Israel's attack on Gaza, a resolution reading in part the United States Senate reaffirms American support for Israel's right to defend its citizens and ensure the survival of the State of Israel, and says not a single word about Palestinian deaths. And by the way, about 100 rockets fired from Gaza have fallen within Gaza, they say. So they're saying Hamas fired from civilian areas and hits its own people. And is this another government propped up to take the place of the Palestinian Authority? Additionally, U.S. politicians are working to provide millions of dollars in supplementary funding for Israel's Iron Dome missile shield. The U.S. Senate Appropriations Committee added $225 million for Iron Dome to a spending bill mainly intended to provide money to handle an influx of thousands of Central American children across the U.S.-Mexico border. It's not that Iron Dome is all that effective. It fails 75% of the time, said one congressional staffer in an email to Observer earlier this week. But Congress is under pressure to be seen as supporting Israel, and we got to be seen doing something before we adjourn for 5 weeks. As a SOP to AIPAC, the White House announced that on 7/31/14, that it strongly opposes a Republican-crafted emergency spending bill, in part because it contains no funds for Israel missile defense and other presumed necessities. Earlier in the day, the Senate had begun debating a $3.5 billion auxiliary spending measure that included $225 million in additional funding for Iron Dome, when suddenly the White House voiced its opposition to the House version, claiming it does not contain funding for the Department of Defense to support the government of Israel's request for critical defense needs. 7/31/14, Brian Wood, head of arms control and human rights at Amnesty International, reminded Mr. Kirby, the illustrious Rear Admiral, of an unpleasant truth, one that doesn't normally penetrate Washington's deaf and dumb and blind bubble. It is deeply cynical that the White House to condemn the deaths and injuries of Palestinians, including children and humanitarian workers, when it knows full well that the Israeli military responsible for such attacks are armed to the teeth with weapons and equipment bankrolled by U.S. taxpayers. But despite all the government's massive support for Israel, survival of the apartheid regime is not at all assured. Recently expressed antipathy toward the Zionist state from notables in Europe, South America, and parts of Asia seem to be considerably more than just bluster. Israelis are correct in thinking they can no longer count on public opinion, not in Europe or even to a lesser extent, perhaps from the American public either. Not if I have anything to say about it. You Christian Zionists, you Judeo-Christians out there are simply worshiping the synagogue of Satan, and you are blinded by their lies. Increasingly, the latter, American people, are pressuring their Zionist-bought politicians, admittedly on a modest scale still at this point, but in a manner causing them to ponder their electability as Israel continues its descent into a pariah state. A recent Gallup poll found a majority of Americans less than 30 years of age believe Israel's actions in Gaza to be unjustified and criminal. Just like the attitude towards marijuana, now legal in 2 states, is changing, folks. Me talking about Israel and trying to wake the American people up and give them the facts instead of propaganda is having an effect. This is why I need your support. This is why I need you to make a donation today. Go to freeamerican.com. I've got to move. I want to be up next to Michael Connolly. I want to be in Dallas. I want to be in Fort Worth. I want to be speaking all around there. I need the ability to get there. I need your donations today. Today. Now,
speak now to those who rule the former republic of these United States, for you know your crimes. I do not intend for this to be all-inclusive of the charges for which you should be brought to justice. Time does not permit me the luxury of an all-inclusive indictment. Only those which an average man, a free man, finds most abhorrent and deserving of your arrest, conviction, execution, and eternal damnation. We, the American people, are your enemy. Not because we want to put your throat under our boot, not because we want to loot your life savings, not because we are allied with nations, powers, and institutions outside of the constraints of the original Constitution and common law, not because we wish to write laws, rules, regulations to tax and criminalize you while exempting ourselves from any manner of law, not because we have written a law that denies you a day in court with a jury of your peers before execution, not because we have pre-positioned war materials across the nation in case you object, not because we wish to plunder the wealth of other nations and distribute the booty among our friends and sycophants, not because we wish to destroy that we may then offer salvation, our iron fist, enclosed in a velvet glove, but only for a time. Not because we wish to be our enemy, but because you have given us no choice. Through the use of subtle and blatant law, you have systematically destroyed the Constitution of these United States. No, we are not all ignorant of the meaning behind the gold fringe on the flags in our courts of so-called law. Nor have we ignored your passing of massive, unintelligible legislative tomes, largely unread and written by the very industries they are purported to regulate, with the effect that now international corporations wield the power of law and as such the gun to enforce and guarantee their profit to the negation of individual.
All right, well, it's not just us, and I know there's I say this in all respect to my friend in Austin who says, Clay, we just got to appeal to the good Jews out there, and my response has pretty consistently been, I'd be glad to do that if I knew any. If I knew any, I'd just be more than happy to do that. Well, they are out there. And there was There is a article somebody sent me, and I don't think I'm going to be able to put that up yet. But got a photograph here saying, "Not in my name." Another Jew saying, "End the bombing of Gaza, end the occupation." That happened in Fort Lauderdale. And this letter here comes from Benjamin Silverman. Benjamin Silverman is a longtime Palestinian solidarity activist, self-identified Jewish anti-Zionist, involved in Jewish Voices for Peace and Students for Justice in Palestine at the New School. Jewish Voice for Peace welcomes all people, Zionists, non-Zionists, or anti-Zionists, who stand up for justice and human rights. Dear American Jewish community, it's time for us to talk. I know that many of you still don't want to talk. Many of you have spent the last few weeks effectively covering your ears and eyes, endlessly repeating IDF talking points as if they will magically make the reality disappear. But if there was ever a time to take the plunge and really look in the mirror at where we've gotten ourselves, this is the time. It's time for us to talk about Israel. It's time to talk about Zionism. Now, I'm addressing this, Benjamin Silverman is addressing this to the Jewish community, and I'm sharing it with all of the Christians that once listened to me, that supported me, that backed me. You may have turned your back on me because this incessant brainwashing that I told you about, that Benjamin Friedman told you about in my first Free American magazine way back in September. It's time for us Christians to understand what they've done to you. Now here's a Jew talking to fellow Jews, and he says, those Jews have spoken out against Israel's inhumane actions of Zionism warped nationalistic beliefs, have never been well received within our community. When we have argued for human rights and international law, we've been ostracized and excluded from all aspects of mainstream Jewish life. When we've argued against exclusionary segregationist regime, we've been attacked with the most vicious of slanders, self-hating Jews, Nazi collaborators, and worse. When we have tried to stand up against colonialistic violence and occupation, we've been met with angry rejection from our closest friends and family. When we have tried to stand up, when we've tried to reaffirm the values that Palestinians are human beings deserving of equal rights and a future with dignity, we've been met with the full force of an incredibly powerful and well-funded pro-Israel public relations machine. You're talking about the ADL, the Southern Poverty Law, the same people that are attacking veterans, the same people that attack militia, the same people that attack me. A climate of neo-McCarthyism has reigned inside the Jewish community, stifling all debate, dissent, and free thought on the issues of Israel, Palestine, and Zionism. But it's time for all of that to end. I understand that the last few weeks have been hard for you. From a young age, we've all been raised, indoctrinated even, on pro-Israel ideology. Every facet of our Jewish life has been infected with Zionism. from our youth groups to our synagogues to our Hebrew schools to our family cedars. The world hates us. Israel protects us. There we are free and safe and democratic, we've come to believe. But in the last few weeks, we have seen that supposed progressive, freedom-loving, democratic Israel unmask itself before the whole world as a lynch mob society. It kind of reminds me of Benjamin Franklin's description of democracy as two wolves and a sheep voting for what's for dinner. We American Jews have been pricked, just like you American Christians have been tricked into projecting all of our hopes and insecurities into Israel, and we have those beautiful dreams and illusions shattered so badly. That can be difficult, but for all the emotional pain we may be going through, seeing our Star of David pasted on bombs being dropped on innocent civilians, it's nothing compared to the pain being felt by those civilians. Palestinians have suffered greatly at our hands. They've been violently forced from their lands and homes to appease the Holocaust guilt of Europe and the greed of the Zionist colonists. They've been forced to live under an openly Jim Crow, discriminatory and segregationist, Jewish-only apartheid state, and the whole process has become endemic in its repetition, with wave after wave after wave of land theft, oppression, segregation, and violence. The Nakba has been made into a continued, never-ending, 66-year-old ongoing catastrophe. Palestinians have been bombed, shot, detained, brutalized, tortured, dehumanized, occupied, and worse, all in our name. We Jews have a lot of blood on our hands. We've been made complicit in these inhuman acts, and we have a responsibility now to do something about it. We need to rethink what never again really means. Does it mean for us never again for Jews only? Or does it mean never again for everyone? Now, I'm not asking you, Benjamin Silverman says. I'm not asking or expecting you, the whole American Jewish community, to renounce everything you've been taught to believe overnight just yet. But I'm asking that you I am asking and expecting you to open your minds a little, to start questioning what you have been taught. The pro-Israel bias in our community has corrupted and stifled open, free discourse for far too long. And exclusion of any dissenting Jewish opinion outside of the most narrow of ultra-Zionism has led our people into a cul-de-sac of intellectual dishonesty, moral poverty, and political thuggery, where questioning is discouraged and obedience rewarded. This must come to an end if we are to redeem ourselves and pave a path to the future. All I ask is the following: that you reopen our community to dissenting opinion, that you open up every synagogue, every Jewish community center, every Haliyah, every Hebrew school to a free debate and discussion on Israel, Palestine, and the core beliefs of Zionism. I and others like me want to make our case to you directly as Jews to Jews on why the Palestinians deserve our solidarity, why Israeli militarism must be opposed, and why the Jewish state of Israel necessarily leads to apartheid, and on why the nationalistic and supremacist beliefs of Zionism have led to the corruption of our people with the sins of racism and colonialism. I don't expect a warm reception, but I do expect, at least for the moment of your time, a part of your attention. You owe it to yourself, to your people, to our children, to your children, to all Palestinians, to enter into this discussion with open minds and open heart and start confronting the hard questions. Please help us taking this moment and reassess who we are, what we've done, and where we want to go from here. I look forward to the discussions ahead. Sincerely, Benjamin Silverman. Now, basically, everything he has said here, I feel the same way about Americans, about Christians. I think I am trying to make moves here. I am trying to get into a more populated area so I can reach more people, so I can pass out my business cards, so I can start educating people that this is not about race, this is not about Israel. I mean, it's not about being, we don't want to go out and kill Jews. I don't want any more than I want Jews killing us or Palestinians. We have to stop these eternal wars. We just have to stop it. We have to protect our own. We have to close our borders. You know, I've tried to hire illegals. I was running a company in Arizona and Phoenix. And we had a good employee that was a glass blower, and he'd been working for a friend of mine for a year or so, and he got deported, got sent back to Mexico. So I went down to INS, and how do I get him here? I want to bring him here. I want to get him here. And I couldn't get him here. They would not allow me. There was no method to get somebody here. They just wouldn't allow it. Now, this Jewish gentleman that is trying to speak up for the Palestinians, he's trying to reach out to the Jewish people. I'm trying to reach out to Americans. I'm trying to reach out to Texans. I want you to understand that I don't care what color you are. I don't care who your grandmother slept with. But murder, setting police states up, supporting dictatorial regimes, allowing dictatorial regimes to be set up here, and basically Obama is simply an illegal alien that got elected because the Americans have been dumbed down and programmed so much by the television that they bought into his lies. They were lies. Not from here, not qualified, and he is not living up to his oath. Neither are your congressmen, neither are a lot of your state senators, any of your local politicians that are bringing in Agenda 21 in this. That's Agenda 21 is a direct attack on our ability to farm, our ability to feed ourselves, and more. It's a United Nations deception. And remember what the Mossad is: warfare by deception. God. Why is that so hard for you to understand? Why is that so hard for you to understand? I don't know. Let's see. Let's see what somebody else has to say about this. About being accused of anti-Semitism by well-meaning liberals. This is by Pamela Olson. The recent crime catastrophe in Gaza has been a month of being glued to the news, dry-mouthed, nauseated, furious, and sad. It has meant posting endlessly on Facebook, feeling helpless and useless, but noticing more support than I ever had before, making many more friends and contacts than the few I've lost. My family is even getting it, with my sister-in-law particularly passionate, despite the fact it's scandalizing her Zionist in-laws. It's also meant more contact with pro-Zionist trolls who pop up constantly with well-scripted talking points, defenses of mass slaughter, denials of Palestinian peoplehood, and rather ironic accusations of the type of bigotry known as anti-Semitism. The most recent one featured a Huffington Post article called Liberal Anti-Semitism, which features several paragraphs of hand-wringing about how, when the author hears criticism of Israel, I get so overwhelmed by the flood of thinly veiled Jew loathing that I can't respond to anything else. She then outlines 5 reasons why supporters of Palestine human rights give her the heebie-jeebies. It's like shooting fish in a barrel to respond to each of them in turn, but I did so anyway in order to give ammunition to people who are new to this conflict and may be intimidated by this type of rhetoric. Here is my rebuttal. The failure to focus on the log in our own eye. I have been a critic of American foreign policy since before I knew who occupied whom in the Palestine and Palestine-Israel. Just because I happen to be talking about Palestinian rights now doesn't mean I don't have other passions or interests. 2, our silence when it comes to the role of the surrounding countries who want Palestinians to remain right where they are as pawns in a global power struggle. As far as Palestinian refugees having a hard time in surrounding countries, which is often true, it wasn't Jordan or Syria that created the Palestinian refugee crisis, and the U.S. government pretty much pays the Egyptian army to make it difficult for the Palestinian. Talk about a failure to focus on the log in our own eye. And 3, our indifference to Jewish post-traumatic dynamics and conditions that reactivate the trauma. You have no reason to assume anyone is indifferent to Jewish or Israeli suffering without any evidence other than the fact that they support equal human rights for Palestinians without explicitly every time adding a disclaimer that satisfies you. I admit I'm sometimes cavalier about the actual threat Israelis feel right now compared to the horrific violence the Israeli army has been inflicting on mostly innocent Palestinians, with 90+% Jewish Israeli support. There's really no comparison when it comes to suffering, and yet Israelis want the world to feel Israel's overblown fear more than the Palestinians' unimaginable loss and pain. And it's hard for me to take a grown adult seriously when they do that. It's so blind and racist. But whatever collective PTSD Israelis may have, we should all have empathy for that, but post-trauma does not exempt one from any accountability for criminal behavior any more than someone who was abused as a child should be free to abuse whoever they like without censure. How about a double standard for Middle Eastern countries? Last time I checked, we weren't giving Syria $3 billion per year in foreign aid or blanket political cover to do whatever they like. And still, I haven't been silent about Syria, and neither have any of the people of conscience that I know, though I'm not an expert of Syria and really have no clue what to do about it. But look, if you want Israel to be treated like an out-of-touch, bloated with oil or Western aid money autocracy, or held to no higher standard than the Taliban, stop calling it the only democracy in the Middle East, with the most moral armory in the world and shared value with the West. You can't have it both ways. There's more to say to this, but the author doesn't seem to know about Israel's internal dynamics of racism, sexism, or occasional genocidal rhetoric, but I'll leave it there for now. And 5, our lack of comparable passion for others suffering in the world. So you can read everyone's mind. You know what kind of passion we have about all the suffering in the world? Must be a neat trick. Teach it to me sometime. Personally, I focus on Israel-Palestine more than other conflicts because I lived there for 2 years, have a lot of friends directly involved. It's the largest recipient of U.S. military aid in the world, and it seems that there is some tantalizing hope of changing things, especially through educating fellow Americans who have been mostly brainwashed into demonizing one side and thus being blinded to a lot of basic and very disturbing truths about what is being done in our name and with our tax dollars. I suspect part of the reason other people focus on it because there's a lot of support for Israel in America, and it gets reported in the news, often wrong or out of context detail. There seems to be a peace process or a war blasted across the news. It's been going on for decades, so people get invested in this long, drawn-out soap opera narrative. Plus, many people have read the Bible, so we feel some connection to the land, the River Jordan and Jerusalem and all that, more than, say, the Sudan, which most Americans know absolutely nothing. Doesn't mean it's right, but it's more a plausible explanation than the fact that we're all, including major news networks, secretly anti-Semitic. Palestinians are also educated and social media savvy, so they're a bit better at getting their message out than some people in other conflict zones. Plus, they've asked the world to come to their aid through a BDS movement that can literally get everyone in the world involved, even if our governments won't do crap. A good model for other oppressed people throughout the world. By implying that, because I focus disproportionately on this subject, I must be a closet anti-Semite. You are simply throwing around slander in an apparent attempt to silence me. Sorry, it won't work. The best part of the article was this quote by Alexander Solzhenitsyn, which we would all do well to keep in mind. If only it were so simple. If only there were evil people somewhere insidiously committing evil deeds. If it were necessary only to separate them from the rest of us and destroy them. But the line dividing good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. This was written by Pamela Olson, who lived in beautiful Palestine for 2 years during and after the Second Intifada, and is deeply humbled by that unearned privilege, given how many of them billions of Palestinians aren't even allowed to visit. She's willing to send a free PDF copy of her book, Fast Times in Palestine, to anyone who wishes to learn more about what life is like under Israeli occupation. You can contact her through her website if you wish to. All right. I think this move I'm planning on making is a good thing. I think by getting up into a more populated area, an area I'm quite familiar with, I think it will just have a positive effect. I think I'll be able to sell more books. I'm looking at different forms of packaging, different ways to promote it. But it's available right now. You can download it from my website as a PDF onto your computer. You can put it from your computer into your cell phone and be able to read the whole thing on your smartphone and show it to other people. $2.99 per issue. And you can also get my books up there, both fiction and non-fiction. Mystery Babylon is non-fiction. You can get those freeamerican.com, shop.freeamerican.com. I'm really encouraging you to do that. I need gas money, I need rent money, I've got to move up to a new place, I've got to pay somebody to haul my trailer up there and buy gas for them up there. So I need a few $100. You'd have to buy a few more magazines to help, but you can make a donation right now. I've been getting you this information, good information, for 20 years or more. I'm asking you to help now. Take a step out there. Take a step out there and help. Just on this show today, I've told you about what's going on with your president. I've told you about the United Justice Foundation that is working for you. Michael Connolly was a great guest. I'll have him back on. He deserves your support. And so I think he and I deserve your support a hell of a lot more than any of these politicians that you might be donating to. It's just you are being programmed by this television. You're being programmed by communist organizations, the ADL, Southern Poverty Law, AIPAC. They don't call them communism. They demonized McCarthy. They silenced a lot of people. They haven't silenced me. They've tried to kill me, but they haven't silenced me. They stopped the Free American for a while, but it's back now. I don't have 10,000 subscribers like I used to have. I don't have thousands of people buying it at Barnes & Noble right now because my websites are blocked. Tell people about them. I'm gonna, when I get up to Fort Worth and Dallas, I'm going to be traveling around and I'm going to be passing out cards left and right. Here, understand what's going on here. Go here, check this. And you want to just kick back and relax, get some of my fiction books. They're pretty good. They're pretty good, if I do say so myself. And back to Veterans Today. They say, despite all the American government's massive support for Israel, survival of the apartheid regime is not at all assured. Recently expressed antipathy toward the Zionist states from notables in Europe, South America, and parts of Asia seem to be considerably more than just bluster. Israelis are correct in thinking they can no longer count on public opinion, not in Europe or even from the American public either. Increasingly, the latter are pressuring their Zionist-bought politicians, admittedly on a modest scale at this point, but in a matter causing them to ponder their electability as Israel continues its descent into a pariah state. A recent Gallup poll found a majority of Americans less than 30 years of age believe Israel's actions in Gaza to be unjustified and criminal. This is because younger Americans have grown up witnessing the U.S. armed and propped up Israel brutally occupying the West Bank, killing Palestinians, while also invading Lebanon, and numerous periodic attacks that claim more than 30,000 lives between 1948 and 2006. In aggregate, Americans still see Israel favorably, but in smaller numbers, while more are viewing it as illegitimate, as a 19th century colonial enterprise with no legitimate place in a civilized international society. Delegitimization, says Enif Wilf, a former Israeli parliamentarian and one of the authors of a yet unpublished study of the topic at Jewish People Policy Institute in Jerusalem, is becoming a strategic threat. As Robert Fisk pointed out this week, Gaza, which is being so graphically covered by journalists that our masters in our media are suffering a new experience, not fear of being called anti-Semitic, but fear of their own television viewers and readers. Ordinary folks so outraged by war crimes committed against the women and children of Gaza, they are demanding to know why. Even now, television moguls and politicians are refusing to treat their own people like moral, decent, intelligent human beings. From Antwerp to Warsaw, demonstrators' placards have ranged from criticism of Israel policy, 1, 2, 3, 4, occupation no more, to condemning Israel itself, 5, 6, 7, 8, Israel is a terrorist state. A growing percentage of the world's population is coming to the conclusion that the regime occupying Palestine is a mistake and that history must be corrected. As The Economist recently reported, France has experienced a major unrest, which may be no surprise given it claims the largest Jewish and Arab populations in Europe, but the extent of the tensions in France, including attacks on synagogues and raids on Jewish shops, has been shocking nevertheless. Even in normally sedate Oslo, the Jewish Museum closed its doors. Frankly, it comes as no great surprise that many Jews feel the world is against them and view criticism of a Zionist apartheid Israel as a mask for animosity towards Jews. In this, they are very wrong. Let them visit the Middle East in peace, and they will learn quickly that the rejection here is not about Jews, but only about Zionism as a fascist, racist creed. When people of goodwill what people of goodwill will reject in the Middle East as elsewhere is an antiquated movement that promotes a chosen people's right to steal land belonging to others while ethnically cleansing an indigenous population, a movement that encourages chants of death to Arabs among school children, whose settlers organize fun days, gathering as spectators to observe Zionist forces slaughtering Arab children in Gaza, as teachers hand out balloons and ice cream while leading the children in hate-filled songs. International public opinion matters, and much of it is relating to the carnage being inflicted by these illegal occupying Palestine is right. The international public is increasingly aware of what is happening in Palestine today. It is not really about Hamas. It's not about rockets. It's not about human shields or terrorist tunnels. God bless.
What mainstream media won't tell you. Are you frustrated with your elected politicians? Get the news behind the news at truthradio.com.